What's up, folks? It's been a second. It's been a minute. How have y'all been? I'm Odd, by the way. I've been working a little bit. I got a job, so I've been kind of off schedule, obviously. But I'm back to, essentially, in this case, voiceover, a re-redraw of something I made all the way back in 2016. The last redraw of it I did was in 2019. So today we're going to be looking back at it. There's some issues, I feel like, even with the newest one. For one, she's a Shiba Inu, which if you look in the other two, like, it's not as obvious, but she's got husky markings. So initially she was supposed to be a red husky, but that's beside the point. The angle of the whole original and stuff like that, like, it was a lot. It was very experimental, and I don't think it aged well because it doesn't look right, and just like the whole of it just does not look good. And I'm going to be voicing over a Speedpaint here so that I can get all my thoughts out about this, because trust me, like, you do not know how much I need to cut out when I'm just recording and I go silent because I'm focused on lining. Like, this is a whole illustration and I needed every bit of my focus on the illustration. Maybe one day I can go and, sit down live and do something like this. But today is not that day. And that's okay, because we got to go in and make some thumbnails, which are something that I don't make a lot. I'm really glad that I did. They make everything turn out so much better, and I know how to use them better now, and just like laying out how things work is so much easier that way. So yeah, here you can see that I'm just kind of getting an idea of where everything should be with my thumbnails, and I already kind of had an idea in mind, so I was kind of stuck with it. Found a sketch that I really liked pretty quickly, so I really just moved on with that and changed it up as I went, but it was pretty much the same, and I liked the initial, like, just one-point perspective, really, of the original. Well, I don't know, like, I do like it. I do. I don't know, it just seemed like it would probably suit it better as well. It was what I meant to say. And here I copied it, and I started playing around with colors. Because I knew that I wanted it to be blue and orange because they're complementary colors, and because the character that we're working with already is a red husky, so it just made sense to have everything in the background and all the shadows be very blue, and it especially makes her look out of place, I think, in this situation. So I was playing around with that, pretending I knew something about color theory, going in and coloring everything very, very loosely, just to get an idea of what I was doing. And then I went back in and I, fleshed things out a little bit more, so I didn't wind up with a little demon llama in the background and a weird not dog in the front. As you can see, I'm even planning out some of the graffiti in the background. I put a blue overlay over everything except for the windows, which got me a much nicer color scheme. I'm a little happy face by it because I was really proud of it. And then I basically I moved around the windows and stuff like that to make sure that everything would be in place, and I could remind myself of that. I stole all my sketches. I popped them over here. And this is where the sketching process began. So the actual sketch is probably a lot more detailed than I would normally go in and sketch something. If you've seen anything else, I've probably talked about how, at least once, how much I have this tendency to sketch with my line work, which it's a habit. I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad depending on the situation, but I don't really, do all that well with it, and I think it leaves me frustrated and a little bit more worn out from the process, because I'm basically making the whole thing from scratch each time. And you can see I'm sketching in some of the fur details, which I didn't actually line in. It's been a minute since I've done anything like that. I also used a lot of references here. I interpreted them differently, but I had in my in my my pulled up webpage, I had both that reference that I kept going back to. I had a whole bunch of red huskies up for reference. I had more abandoned buildings up for reference just to make sure that I was getting what I wanted. And then, yeah, when it came to the background was much, much more messy, which, again, I think something else that worked out in my favor, because I just let myself kind of be a bit more freeform with it. Like, there's a part of my brain that thinks that industrial, more industrial backgrounds are a bit easier, but I also think it's because I tend to make them a little too square. Later on, you'll see me as I'm lining, I go in and just kind of let the lines do what they want. And then these little, like, receding hallways. I didn't know what they were initially. I realized later that they were probably just rooms or corridors, like separating what used to be parts of the building, as you can see in that reference. But I really liked it, and I really wanted to include it somewhere in the background, because, like, I don't know, when it comes to, like, repeating patterns like that in, like, hallways or windows, it's so spooky. And this is supposed to be somewhat spooky. It's a mixture between whimsical and spooky, because you've got this little dog exploring this abandoned building and possibly going to her death, because there is a doppelganger about. It's taking the form of her, so she's probably going to be its next victim. And then here I started planning out some of the graffiti. I just wrote graffiti in some circumstances, just like extra fancy in some situations. I put in some references, and then some storytelling in the graffiti. I put a lot of these in the further one, and the yellow paint is important, which is why I marked it as yellow, because just as much so as the husky is out of place in this building because she doesn't totally match the color scheme. There's something a little off about the fact that you got a blue background and very prominent yellow paint, which, I don't know, is that a very common spray paint? I don't think it is. Details. And yeah, this probably took me, it took me like 3 sessions was the thing. So 3 days, but overall, everything together probably took me about 5 hours. So it's one of my longer taking pieces. Because typically, I would say that when I go in and do something fairly rendered and stuff like that, it's going to take me about 3. I work pretty fast, but yeah, this one was one of those pieces that took me a little while longer, and it's just always so nice to be able to do that. You see, I'm going back to my my husky references, because I didn't totally like her nose, and I knew that it was wrong, so I let myself focus on those details. And I don't know, I don't usually have the energy for that, so I was happy to have that. Like I said, I've been kind of working lately. I got a job at a hotel, and I've been settling in, and so video upload schedule might be a little non-existent for a while, but they'll be up. I still like doing these, so it's not like, I'll just stop altogether. But the Thursday uploads are probably going to be a thing of the past for now. I have a more consistent schedule, so I may find times of the week that I'd like to, record and upload again, but right now it's kind of a hit or a miss. Getting the zippers to work on this backpack was fun. I forgot that that they're probably supposed to open from the top and go around. Added some little wrinkles, bits, and stuff like that, and I think it really added some depth to the backpack. I was really happy about that. Just like the little things, like, and I don't think that in the other one there's a lot of like depth or life in the backpack. There's not a lot of depth or life or in anything. you know? And even the background, it's like, well, yeah, it's supposed to be abandoned, but it's kind of a character too. Oh, and the tail. This took me a minute, but I did find something that I enjoyed, which was really nice, because it's like the fluffiness wasn't doing it for me. I tried maybe stylizing a little bit more, but all the references had their tails kind of spiky, so I wanted to, you know, get that in there, and nothing was looking good to me. And so I finally went in, and I made that little ring, and I went around, and I just started adding little, like, triangles in a flat line, and then just breaking out from the line every once in a while. And that turned out really nicely. Also, thank the internet. That little, like, strap, that little, like, harness-looking strap that's a little weird on her backpack, that is from a backpack made for dogs. Like, I was expecting when I typed in dog backpack to get a lot of backpacks that you put your dog in, there was at least one of a little pug wearing a pink backpack that showed how a dog might look if it were to wear a backpack. Was it functional there? Maybe, probably not. Is it functional here? Still an honest question. I don't really know. Yeah, here is where I took all of the straight lines that I had put in and I drew over them by hand, especially for the pipes here, and I just kind of let the lines do what they wanted. So you can see like just the little bit of shakiness to the lines. It's funny, there were some bits where I really proudly drew a pretty straight line and went back in and was like, I need to start messing it up again. And then here I realized that it was supposed to be a bit more of a plane behind them. So I took out some of that line and moved it back so that you've got that little platform in the background leading you to danger. I made a little piece of concrete with some rebar sticking out of it. I know they exist. I also used to work at a Home Depot, and we sold those. I don't know what they're for. I assume they're great for foundation or something, but, you know, they'd be in a broken down building, right? And I went in and just went over absolutely everything in the background as truly as I could. It was definitely like a different experience, but I think it turned out really nicely. At first, it was a little meh. Everything was just kind of there. I moved the poles so that they wouldn't get shaded over. This one I feel like is almost a hybrid between the very first one that I made, or maybe the second one that I made and the last one that I made, because the most recent one is also a bit more painterly. And this one, I would say, is a bit more, I don't know, what do you say, like illustrative? It's not necessarily a painting or, you know, just like a cartoon. It's somewhere in between, like a not even semi-realism, but you get the idea. So, yeah, now I'm just going in with all of the little fur, and that was so much fun. The thing was with the newest one, and me accidentally making her a Shiba Inu, was that I don't tend to look at the previous ones that I've done. My reasoning behind that, as a habit for redrawing, is that I figure that if I'm so focused on what I feel like I should redo and stuff like that, I'll get tunnel vision. And it won't look as good as the original, because I keep trying to compare it to the original, and the original isn't how I draw anymore. So instead, I just kind of go at it knowing the concept, maybe looking at the original pieces once or twice, and then just sort of going at it how I feel like I would draw it now, which I feel like is a good way to go about a redraw. Also, I really do like going in on clothes that are like the same color and just kind of adding in colors, like even before you add in shading. Just adding in slightly different colors, and it just like, it makes things pop a little bit. I love doing it with like jeans and jackets and everything in between, because it's like, it's not like, I don't know, it could be a different material, could be a different color, but like the light hits it differently, and it just looks different. It just looks nicer, more visually interesting to me. I don't know if that's any sort of a tip. It was so funny having those two little blocks, because they're in the foreground. I feel like my brain wanted to treat them like characters. So they almost have a sort of personality to me. Maybe this is just how I think when I draw, but they became like little dopey characters that were all like, yay, we're included whenever I did something that involved them. Went in and did some of her fur, did some of the harsher shadows, and then I think it's time for the lighting. Oh, this is my favorite part, and it's my favorite part of the original idea, which is why I think I keep using this as a progress piece, is because it's so like I like the idea, and I like playing with the lighting. I should do this more often, and that's what redraws tell me, is that I want to actually draw more stuff. It's just that, I don't know, sometimes I need to bank on my old ideas. So yeah, the original idea, which I don't think the first redraw even like echoed at all, is that the character is being lit by these like little latticed windows, and that's so cool. I don't know why I ever tried not to. And then like in the newest one, they're definitely not as bright. They're not as prominent. They're still there, but I don't think that I got them the way that I wanted them to, So going back in here and just doing this and like making sure all the shadows were roughly in the right place. I didn't have a complete reference for this, so at this point I was just kind of winging it. And there are some shadows in here that are probably questionable, but I don't know. And initially I was going to have her, and you'll probably see it for a good while, have her shadow coming up behind her and onto the wall. But based off of how the windows work, I don't think that would have worked at all. So I just cut it back to being her shadow taking over the light coming in from the window, because that made sense. And that, it just covered the rest of the floor. I'm glad I got rid of it later, even though it was a lot of work to try and cut everything else out. It's okay. Oh god, the lighting. I love the lighting. It's so cool. My throat is doing something weird. I just love the little lights of the windows. I think they turned out so nice. I just used 800 overlay filters on them. There are so many layers here. You can tell. You can tell in the background here. And yeah, I do name things, but I did not name all of these layers. I am pretty good about naming my layers, but when it comes to this, I'll usually just throw everything that's related into one file and be done with it. And then here, I spent about 30 minutes working on a demon mask that's only half visible, because I thought that it'd be an interesting piece to have hanging out in the background. And I looked up a reference for it and everything, and just working on that for a minute. It turned out nicely though, so, you know, adds a little bit to the graffitied wall, which is very impolitely graffitied, by the way. There's lots of space on this wall and y'all are painting over each other. That's not good etiquette. Even I know that, and I don't do graffiti. A couple references to my name, and then the word doppelganger. What was that? The word doppelganger, half finished, and crossed out by that yellow paint that I was talking about. And on this one, the original had some aspect of it, but I wanted it to be like hidden, and that didn't turn out well. And it's like, no, this stuff in the background is small enough, but it's supposed to be telling the story. After this, it was just kind of going in with texture everywhere, playing around with the lighting. At some point, I get rid of that shadow and just kind of move it down. Yeah, add some texture to the floor, add a little bit of shadow, add light to her eyes. This is all just really like finishing detail stuff. And I even went in, this is something I don't usually do, on like a super detail level, and just, yeah, drew in some like little hairs sticking out and some little like facial features, gave her some small whiskers. It's all like tiny details, and I don't know how much of an effect it makes, but it was really fun. So, and you know what, I kept it in. It looks pretty. I'm not upset by it, you know. Putting in noise in the background to make everything look kind of rocky was fun. And then I did something similar, I think, with the windows. I was trying to make dust motes. So essentially, like, have those little things that float around, and I do. In another layer. The one that I initially tried to experiment with was, in fact, just putting another noise layer over the windows, and just sort of putting another noise layer over the windows and trying to, like, invert the colors or something like that. And it didn't turn out totally the way that I wanted, but then I realized it made the windows look kind of dirty, which made sense for the place, right? So yeah, I did that, and I think it turned out really well. And then I just kind of went in and hand drew in some of the dust motes, just kind of floating around for some magical effect, you know? Which they don't really show up all that much, but they're there. I think it adds something. You know they're there now. I don't know. Yeah. And then I added a little bit of, I think it was rock texture, but it worked pretty well for like the rusty sensation, the rusty feeling of the poles. And there's me finally getting rid of that shadow. And yeah, here's the final result, just in its full glory. Overall, I'm really happy with this. I think that it turned out so nicely. But that's about all I have to say about that. I ran out of time much quicker than I thought I would. So I will see y'all next time.